Welcome to the Saints Crown Show. This is a show for men who want to grow. In a world where confusion is the culture and passivity is the practice, we exist to take men from gaining massive clarity to taking massive action. Because we believe that if we can help bring order to your life, you can bring order to your world.
Well, welcome back to the Saints Crown Show. I'm your host, Zachary Reed, and I'm here with co-founder Preston Woody. And we're talking about the 40-day wilderness experience. It's another one of those things that we've kind of sprinkled into our conversations up until this point. And man, I'm so excited to talk about it because it was a life-changing experience both times that we went. So why don't you share a little bit behind the heart behind it, and why we did these, and like what is a 40-day wilderness
Just
experience?
think about it. What do you think of when you think 40-day wilderness experience? I think of something that I want to do, frankly, and it's something that's become a part of my lifestyle since 2020.
Yeah.
At least twice a year. So this is the origin of it, and then we're going to share the outcome of it. Like the origin was in 2020, I was taking a drastic left turn and maybe right turn in my vocation. And I decided, and this is what I felt like I needed to do, was to spend 2 nights in the wilderness, no food, no shelter except a hammock, no stimulation, no phone, no nothing, no buddy, and immerse myself to just get with my creator, to get in this place of sobriety, to just hear and get super crystal clear. 'Cause I felt like I was in a place of confusion. And I wrote out during that time a series of questions. I wrote out a few questions that I wanted answered. And by the end of, it was about 40 hours, by the time I got back to my car, vehicle, and phone, I had every single answer for every single one of those questions. Clarity on my life direction. And what I decided to do was to do it again. And I did it again and again. And then I felt like it's time to take other people on this journey. Yeah. And that's the origin of the 40-hour experience.
Yeah, I think I said 40 days earlier, but it was only 40 hours.
Yes.
I can remember in the group when you introduced it, and I was like, oh, I don't know about this. Because I haven't done a lot of camping or like wilderness training, like knives, all of those things. I was like, I'm not really sure about this.
Yes.
And I was really apprehensive, but I was excited.
Yes.
Because I knew I wasn't going to be by myself. I knew I was going to be with friends. Like it was going to be fun.
And we were 80% city boys in that group.
Yeah.
We were all like hardcore city boys, skinny jeans city boys.
I remember walking because you get to the campsite.
Yes.
It's like a little bit of a hike to get to the spot in Arkansas. It's like right at the foot of a mountain. And I remember the anxiety because there's thunder and it was getting cloudy. And I knew that I had everything that I needed for this weekend was like on me. And if I didn't build a shelter right now, I'm going to like lose all my stuff and like be drenched all weekend.
Yes.
And I just remember like literal anxiety to just get my hammock set up and the rain fly set up and like everything that was needed because it sounded like it was about to pour.
Yes.
And it was sheer fright of that. And I remember you're like going around checking, how's it going? And everyone's like, good. And I'm like, I'm good. I'm just trying to get this set up. And just like in like frantic go mode, trying everything that I possibly can to get because
the elements are coming
in place. And it literally, right when we finished setting up, I remember it just poured.
Yes.
But like we had all finished setting up our spots like right when it had started.
Yes. Yeah. I can't wait to get your perspective and outlook because this is the first time we're really diving all the way through it together. And so this 40 days, we're 40 hours committed to 40 hours, boots on the ground in the wild. No phones, none of this stuff.
Yes.
And during this 40-hour time, it's designed to, through a series of questions, come to a place of massive clarity
Yeah.
on our and your life for the next season of life. So the goal is we immerse ourselves in sobriety and we come out with massive clarity for what are we going to do next? Why do
Yes.
we need to do it? What's my next mission?
Yeah.
And what do I need to change? What do I need to give up to go up to the next level? And so it's a series of challenges and experiences, immersive experiences. This is an immersive experience.
Yeah.
To be able to provoke the most amount of change in the shortest amount of time. And 40 is strategic because 40 is the ancient number of testing. So we're putting ourselves through 40 hours of strategic testing and
Willing testing.
yes.
Like I'm submitted to this process.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because ultimately we understand it in life is we will be tested,
Yeah.
but we do get to choose it. Like
Yeah.
we can willingly choose to embrace testing. And when we do so, it's so much more tolerable and enjoyable.
Yeah.
But that's what the process was. So we get to the camp and the campsite.
Which the drive-in was awesome. I think most of us, because we didn't set this rule on the first one, but most of us just kind of immediately turned off our phones in the process of the journey out there, which was like, what, was it 6 hours?
Maybe 6, maybe 5.
And it felt like only 2 or 3 because like our conversation was so good.
Engaging.
And we were just building relationship with each other and eating beef jerky in the van and trekking out to that spot. And so then you get to the site and now it's time to hike up there. And I remember totally not being prepared. Like 100% had the wrong gear. Like I didn't have any like hiking pants or anything. I had I even brought like Nike fly knits that are like super flexible and like no grip whatsoever on the bottom, like no boots, no anything. I was not prepared. And so the very first task is to hike to the spot. And I just remember being like, what in the world did I sign up for? Outside of the anxiety of like, I've got to get my shelter up, but like I'm getting eaten alive by chiggers and bugs and all of the elements like on our way in there and just being like, man, what are we doing? Did I make the right decision?
Yes. Now that first day, what was one of the more impactful moments that you recall?
Yeah. So after it rained, we luckily had a little shelter there that we all were able to kind of hang out in for a while the rain let up. We had our first meal. And I believe the first activity we did was chopping down the tree. Right? So you brought out a series of axes to choose from. We're like, what are we about to do? And the objective was to go and cut down a tree. And the trees were already pre-selected for us. And so we went, so we got a brief demonstration from John how to cut down a tree. And then we were handed an axe. And the objective was to go cut down this tree. And so we go ahead.
And I remember we certainly have upgraded the experience for
then,
the setup for the next one. But I think it worked out just right the way it should have. And I remember now walking over to you and your tree and the process because you had a healthy sized tree.
It was pretty massive. And like,
talk to me about that moment.
So my hands were blistering because I didn't have gloves. I wasn't prepared, I think it was even raining, if I remember correctly. And you had asked me, so I was pretty exhausted because I was cutting through the tree. I didn't feel like I was making progress on it. And I remember you came over and you asked me this incredible question. You were like, what does the tree mean? And I'm like, what do you think it, like in my mind, I'm like, what do you think it means? Like, I'm just trying to cut the dang thing down, because it was like not budging. And I'm like, meaning that's the last thing I'm thinking of other than getting it cut down, But then I paused. I remember pausing and you're like, no, what does it mean? And I remember immediately, like in my spirit, felt like the Lord said, the tree represents comfortability. And that was all he said. I was just like, okay, whatever. And I'm like whacking at the tree, And then it's continuing. I think other guys' trees were falling down,
Yes.
and
Because you could
and
hear
I'm
the screams.
yeah,
and
and they're
the
like,
cheers.
"Ah!" Like everyone's going crazy as their trees being cut down, and like I'm like still in the midst of like cutting this tree down and making progress, but
Yes.
not really making progress, and I'm like exhausted, and so I'm whacking away, and then other guys start coming over where I am. And then all of a sudden there's this encouragement and mutual like, you can do this, and I'm like, okay. And so cutting this tree down, and it finally got to a point where then it started to come down, but then it was like still connected.
Yes.
And I'm like, no, like it's got to come all the way down. You
Yes.
know what I mean? Like for most people, if it would have just fallen down, they'd be like, okay, great, we're done. But I was like, no.
Yes. I've come this far.
This thing needs to be completed all the way through. And so I remember John helped me with strategy of like how to,
Because no one was
get
allowed
it
to
disconnected.
help or to touch.
Yeah, like you had to do it on your own.
Yes.
And so John told me what to do, so then I was going, and then it finally like hit the ground.
Yes.
And it's like pouring down rain.
Yes.
We're like drenched. And it was like this immediate relief of
Yes.
like the tree came down.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I remember the uproar of the men that were around began to cheer.
Yeah.
What did that feeling feel like?
Yeah, it felt victorious, and after the Lord highlighted that for me the tree represented comfortability, I started looking around at all of these other trees that were in the forest and just thinking about how there's multiple areas in life that I had grown comfortable in. And just thinking about even just how trees take root and how they start off small and grow bigger over time. And just the fact that like comfortability really creeps in and takes root. And the larger the root system gets, the stronger the tree gets and continues to grow. And so I was like blown away with the level of victory that one, I was able to cut a tree down with an axe,
Yes.
which I'd never done before in my life. But I was exhausted, but I felt like victorious.
Yes.
Like I was like, yeah, like I took
Yes.
this down. And so it made me think, okay, the levels that I've grown comfortable in life can come down. Like I have the ability to chop down these trees.
Yes.
Because I just proved that I did it in the natural. And so that's kind of what started the entire trip off, really, because that was the first activity that we did.
Was the significance in that victory more the physical breakthrough or symbolic breakthrough?
Both. It was, I'm capable of cutting a tree down if
Yes.
need be. And this was a big tree. And knowing that I was physically capable of doing that. And then too, just like symbolically, it was like, man, like, okay, comfortability is something deeply rooted, and like it's gonna take a lot to cut this out of my life, but it's possible because I just destroyed this in the natural. So like, how much more impactful can it be internally, symbolically, through like cutting down these trees of comfortability just in different areas of life?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So we fell the tree. There were a couple other instances and councils. That's what we call them when we come together.
councils.
We'd have council
Yes.
meeting. And so talk to me about what happened next.
Yeah, so from there we wound down for the first night. We had council, and then that was the first night sleeping in the wilderness.
Yes.
And
Was it of your life?
yeah, I mean, so I was like a Cub Scout growing up, and so we would go camping, but it was nothing like this. And so this is my first time sleeping in a hammock, setting it up and like navigating in the pitch dark, like getting to your campsite every
Yes.
night. And then like for me, it was the unsettled feeling of trying to fall asleep.
Yes.
Because it was so dark and you would hear things. And I'm like, is there a bear coming? Is there like some animal that's going to take me out in my sleep?
Right.
Are there snakes underneath me? I mean, like, it was just like all of this like mental turmoil of the unknown and the darkness,
Yes.
which is representative in itself. But just like getting to a quiet capacity to like drift off But then in the morning, not really knowing if you actually slept, but knowing that you were like in and out like all night because you're kind of frightened for your life, but also exhausted from chopping a tree down. So it was like a fine mix.
That first night is always more challenging to get that actual deep rest. But yet simultaneously, I always feel like maybe I got 3 to 4 hours, but I feel like I have enough energy of 8.
Yeah, to push through and like get going.
When I'm sleeping outside, which is strange.
And it was like in the mornings. My favorite part was the mornings because it was always so peaceful. I didn't like necessarily the evenings because it outside of like winding down around the campfire and like you know, talking and all that kind of stuff. The mornings were always my favorite because it was just so peaceful and cold and like you just like felt nature. You heard nature. Everything's waking up. And like really it puts it into perspective that like nature is like a constant active state. And like it even says in the word of God that creation is like groaning and for the creator. And so it really puts that verse into perspective when you're in nature trying to fall asleep and you hear nature moving and nature speaking and all these different things. So yeah, it was interesting those first like in the night. But then morning comes and you wake up and we have breakfast and we're doing counsel. You walked us through multiple teachings throughout the weekend. And I think the next big challenge was the mountain, I believe, after we ate breakfast. Hydrated.
Well, let's dive into the mountain.
We go to the mountain.
So what are you thinking?
I'm thinking
because I don't know that
I love hiking.
I don't know that we said much context as to what was going to happen.
Yeah, so
we walk up to the mountain.
Yeah, we take a hike into the mountain, and again, I'm wearing tennis shoes.
Yeah.
Okay. And sliding all over the place because it had been raining throughout the weekend, and it was the only weekend that it had rained like all season. So everything is just like drenched. And we get to a place and I'm like, great, this is gonna be awesome. Like I love hiking. We're gonna hike up this mountain. It sounds peaceful and relaxing. Like I love hiking. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, so plot twist. There's another layer, an element to this that we're gonna add in. I'm like, well, what in the world? So you pull out this rope and we're like, okay. And you said, we're going to connect everyone together and we're gonna have to hike up this mountain together. And it didn't really look like a steep mountain or anything difficult or challenging until you're like this on the mountain and you're connected to a rope with other men and you're like, if one person falls, we're tumbling down this mountain. Right. And so, yeah, that was like the setup to the challenge.
Do you remember what it felt like getting to the top?
Oh yeah, it was like amazing because we had to. I remember Antonio was leading, and then I was like second in command, and so there were like all of these like leadership moments throughout the challenge because with Antonio leading, we all like it was all of our responsibility to communicate. Hey, we need to slow down. Hey, like to keep the pace going since you're all connected. You can't just have someone that's like running to the top. We all had to keep a consistent pace. And then with me kind of being second in command, I'm kind of like Antonio is driving the direction of or like the pace of where we're going. But then it was almost like my responsibility to identify the direction. Like, okay, we need to go left up here, or there's a marker. And so I believe John had carved a way through these signals that were like impossible to find on certain trees to kind of help navigate us up the mountain. But y'all like took off and went to the top and you're like, we'll see you up there. And so then it was our responsibility to look for the markers and safely navigate our team up the mountain. And so it was challenging. But when we got to the top, it was like, man, we just like climbed this mountain together and it was awesome. And then you did another great job of slowing down with everyone and asking us, okay, what did this mean for you? Like what were the challenges? Like what was the leadership like? And like challenging us to give feedback, which is so important because as leaders, we need feedback in order to get better.
Yes.
And so, yeah, so that was getting to the top. And then once we got up there, we ate lunch and you did a little teaching, and then we did the moment of silence.
Yes.
Which
Yes.
was cool.
Yes. The challenge that I don't know if how many of the guys had done this.
Yeah.
But 60 minutes of complete silence.
Yeah.
No speaking. No like distracting yourselves. No talking. There's no stimulation. You got to keep your mouth shut for 60 minutes.
Yeah.
So we tee that up. We send everyone off for 60 minutes. We're on the top of this mountain in the middle of nature. We're not allowed to talk. Talk to me about what was that like?
Yeah. So at first, it was really hard to stop thinking. Like it was almost like even though we were silent and quiet, it was like all of a sudden then like my mind was loud. And so I had to intentionally quiet myself and get to a place of peace so that I could hear what the Lord was trying to say. And so, because I'd never done that before, like in that context where it was like, we're intentionally taking 60 minutes, we're not going to talk. Like the heart was, go seek the Lord.
Yes.
And so I remember going off to like this rock that had an overlook of just this mountainous area that we were in, which was beautiful. And I just started hearing different sounds and things in nature. And then I found myself quieting down and getting past the noise and realigning focus. And then I remember the Lord distinctly saying that comfortability, which is what was brought up when we were cutting the trees down, that comfortability, I'll never forget it. He said, comfortability is the state that the enemy puts you in as you're slowly being put to death. And I remember him saying that, and I just like pondered on that for like maybe 15, 20 minutes or so. And I was just thinking about how, like, if the enemy can get you into a state of comfortability, it's almost like you're in a nursing home or something, and you're literally being put down like a dog, or like old age, like hospice, like you're being delivered these drugs to slowly put you into a state of death. And I just remember being like, I am comfortable in so many areas of life that I felt convicted that it was time to implement disciplines, implement new focuses, and start looking at life differently. And so, yeah, that was a pretty powerful moment when it was almost like the meaning of the tree got even deeper.
Yes.
And I felt like I had walked away from that moment with an action plan of the things that I needed to do in order to go to the next level. And so then from there, we hiked back down the mountain. I think that was probably like one of the highlights of everyone's trip, or the whole trip for everyone, because no one had really done that before.
Yes.
And I think we all received massive clarity in that moment. And then I think it started raining again, which was beautiful, like as we're like descending the mountain. And then I think we went swimming in the river, right?
Yeah, that's right. At what point did we discuss values and mottos?
Yeah, I think that was in probably one of our councils
Yes.
in the evening. I think you had challenged us to write out a family motto. So I remember first you had us identify things that mattered most to us. And then from there, it was creating an easy to remember motto that encompassed those things. And so for me, being in a new season of obeying the Lord and hearing the Lord. I remember establishing my family motto, which is still my family motto.
Yeah, what is it? Tell us.
Yeah, so it's the reads, hear God, obey, and steward with excellence. And so I felt like that was so applicable to just the new way of doing life. I was no longer going to pursue and do things that I felt like I wanted to do or needed to do, but actually slowing down, hearing God, being obedient to what he said to do. And then anything that I'm doing, whether it be a consultant job or a new business or a 9 to 5, like I'm going to steward it with excellence. And so, I felt like that embodied and encompassed who I am at the core. And it's my life motto to this day. So,
wow. And I remember concluding, because I want to get into you helped lead the second
experience.
So part of the conclusion of that was the next morning. Do you recall much of that final counsel? I know we wrote letters.
We wrote letters, and I remember feeling challenged to write a letter, and I think what I ended up doing is kind of verbally processing when it became my turn. I remember being like, guys, I couldn't come up with anything. I think I need to just verbally process, because at that time, I hadn't shared my story with anyone. I hadn't shared the things I'd walked through. And so I used that time to really walk that through. And then we did just powerful impartation moments where it was like this exchange of, okay, we are now going to focus on the role of the man of man that God has called us to operate in this season. And so we each went around and we were able to pray over each other. And you imparted into each of us really almost kind of like a transfer from thinking like a boy to thinking like a man, and instilling in us the 4 roles of a man. And I remember the last council, the night before that, you had asked us to think about and focus in on what is the role that the Lord really developed inside of us for that weekend. And I remember one of the nights it had rained, and so we didn't have fire. And we didn't bring anything to make fire outside of Flint and the little
Flint and steel tinder.
Flint and steel things. And so I just remember, because everyone was like, I guess we're just not gonna have a fire that night or whatever. And I just remember being no, we're gonna have a fire. We can't have an evening without fire, right? And we were all soaked and wet, and we needed fire anyway to dry off. And so I remember internally being we're building a fire. And so I don't even remember really how we got it started. I know John helped substantially, but we just we pulled together supplies and we started going to town, and it probably took us a good hour to get the fire going. And I'll never forget, I was on the ground.
You're on your knees.
Covered in mud and sweat and all the things. And I'm blowing
breathing
at the right angle to get the flame really going. And I just remember everyone was we got fire going. And so that was another highlight, I think, for that entire trip, was just really that weekend, the Lord was developing inside of me the warrior. And understanding that I didn't have to be a certain way or emulate certain qualities or mimic what society would show as a warrior, or follow a blueprint or a 10-step guide or curriculum or all this stuff. It was no, the Lord's created me to be a warrior, and this weekend I got to tap into that through the way that he uniquely made me. And so it was this powerful revelation. That I was man, the Lord developed a warrior inside of me. And Yeah. So I left pretty empowered, like ready to go on the next one. And even post that trip, I remember um, just continually going on hikes and like enjoying being in nature and things like that. Post that trip because it really like unlocked something inside me. So
And that fire moment where you saw where everyone saw resistance,
Yeah.
you saw
I'm like, breakthrough,
We can
let's
break through.
go, we're doing this.
and the warrior
Yeah.
in you was just unleashed.
Yeah.
And just the roar and the cheer of everyone that moment that the fire caught.
Yeah.
And
And then we had fire the whole
we
night.
had fire the rest of the trip. That was wonderful. So let's switch gears then. So
Yeah.
so you were a participant.
Yeah.
And then, this next year we had, quite a few, we had more men. So we had tribes this next year and you
Yes.
became a leader. So talk to us briefly about your contrast to being a participant to now a leader and leading other men through what you went through.
I think I was excited to facilitate like camaraderie within a tribe. So I remember even like when we divvied up who was going to be in what tribe, like I immediately sent a message out to our tribe and was like, okay, we need a name. We need like bandanas. We need like, is there enough time to get t-shirts made? Like I wanted the whole
You were all
thing,
in.
like the whole experience. We did get bandanas. We did not get shirts made in time, but that was fine. And I even just remember being like, okay, we're going to ride out to the campsite together. So our whole tribe is going to fit in one vehicle and we're going to because I knew how important it was the year before, like that drive in of just like building relationship with people, breaking down walls, all that kind of stuff. And like we had been in small group together, but it's different. It's different when you see someone once a week and you kind of run into them occasionally at church to then spending an intentional like 40 hours with someone. You just get to know them more. And so the drive-in was awesome. We were having a great time driving in, and I'm like doing my best to like father and prepare everyone for what we're about to do. Because some of these guys were like me the year before, like they'd never done anything like this before. And so even just in the preparation of packing, I'm like letting guys know, okay, make sure you get boots, make sure you have gloves, make sure you get pants, like preparing them so that they don't show up like I did with my Nike fly knits and shorts and, just unprepared. And so I felt like we did a great job. Like I feel like my tribe was prepared. I feel like everyone was expectant. We did a great job of intentionally even fasting into that first week into the trip.
That's
so
right.
Everyone had already started this intentional sobriety process. And we were all like, we had group texts going outside of our one
That's
Android
right.
fan.
10. I know it. He missed out on a lot of group texts because he turned everyone's Apple blue green. That we did a 10-day sobriety challenge leading up to it, which is something new that we did.
Yeah, and so it was like
time.
no stimulants, no spending money intentionally, like no extra fun spending. And I think what else was there? No sugar.
And then I think an hour a day
of praying.
Yes.
Yeah.
In prayer.
And so we all pretty much signed up to do that. And so then we got there and I just felt like it was on a whole nother level because we had like spiritually prepared and then we were physically prepared. And so there was just a whole nother level, I felt like, of intentionality behind the trip. But I think the contrast, to go back to your original question, was the first season was me participating, receiving breakthrough, pulling out the warrior inside of me. And then the switch was really helping facilitate that environment for all of the other men that had never done that before. And so that was like something that I didn't even realize was life-giving. Like to see other men cut down their trees and being in the same similar position that I was in the year before, where I'm like one of the last few to go, and then everyone just corrals around the man who's trying to cut that tree down. And it poured raining during that same activity,
Yes.
which I thought was symbolic and
Yes.
and just really cool because we're like standing in the rain as the guys are cutting their trees down, and we're like cheering them on. We're
Right.
praying for them, and every time a tree came down, it was like this explosive moment of
Yes.
joy and excitement, and just like this victorious roar that happened
Yes.
every time a tree would come down.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so this trip, I felt like this last one that we did 6 months ago I felt like it was even more symbolic of just unlocking even the calling that the Lord has placed on my life to intentionally pour into other men and seeing that transformation happen. And so it was awesome.
You did a few things. You taught.
Yes, we did teach.
You did participate in the teaching this time, and you also were a leader, but also a facilitator of intentional discussion. And discussion designed to bring massive clarity and help bring the guys to a place of taking action.
Yes.
So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, when we got to do breakout sessions throughout the weekend, that was it was a little intimidating at first because I'm like, man, how do you do that? But it just came so natural because, again, it's like part of the roles of a man is to bring order and to father and to also be a brother. And so for me, it was cool to step into that and ask questions that, like what you did for me that first year of like, what did that mean? Like, what did that do for you? What is the Lord saying? And it just created this environment where the walls were able to come down and we were able to just get really real and raw with just what some of these guys were walking through, some of the mental battles, the stuff they were facing in their lives, and really step into a role of discipling, loving and caring, and then like praying into and imparting into them really what you did for us that first year. So that was really special, and it was probably one of my more favorite aspects of the trip was being able to impart and teach and facilitate.
I remember getting to the end of that trip and that last breakout session and seeing those groups and looking over at you facilitating, leading, and seeing a couple guys sitting there and just in tears.
Yeah.
And you being now first the participant, now the facilitator of breakthrough moments like that. And I know we spent some time earlier reading through some of the testimonials. Share a little bit about some of the breakthroughs that we've read and some of the things that these guys got to experience.
Yeah, I think a lot of the theme kind of through some of these testimonials were feeling insignificant, unheard, kind of lost in the chaos of day-to-day life, and like distinctly knowing that there was more that they could be operating in. And so what's wild about our group in our last session was about a week before we went on the trip, as we're fasting, a guy in my group called me and was like, hey, I was praying this morning, and in my prayer time, I felt like the Lord was showing me this vision that there was going to be a moment in the trip where we were going to be able to pray and impart encouraging words to the other guys in the group. And so I was like, okay, that's great. Like, let's pray into it. Let's see what the Lord wants to do. And so I didn't even realize until the very moment, but that last session was that moment.
Wow.
So we literally walked that out, and it was a powerful moment where we intentionally surrounded each man and laid hands on him, prayed for him, and the Lord just moved where, you know, we were operating in the prophetic. We were just speaking life and encouragement and just submitting the things that we felt like the Lord was highlighting. And I think all of the men in my group walked away being like, oh my gosh, like this was like a life-shifting moment, and it's because we were just sharing with them how the Lord sees them, and it was just this incredible, encouraging moment. And so yeah, I think just reading through the testimonials re-sparked how another thing that was a theme kind of throughout was there was multiple attacks leading up to the trip where every man that went on that trip had the opportunity to not come. There was everything creating another route to get them to not go. I myself got hit with this like sickness, like leading up to the trip where I didn't even know if I was going to be able to come. I was actually preparing one of the guys in my group to lead if I wasn't able, like I was creating preparation just in case. And like 6 or 7 of the guys had the same type of thing happen where they were like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it. And then all of a sudden I think we were all sitting around the campfire and we realized, oh my gosh, like almost half of us didn't even make it on this trip. And like how grateful we were that we pushed through all of the circumstances to actually get there.
Yes. Do you think anyone regretted coming?
No. Everyone, by the time we left, we were all in like this unity of just joy, excitement, laughter, inside jokes, like Drew falling through his hammock in the middle of the night and coming over to me and being like, what do I do? I'm like, I don't know, bro. Like, you're gonna have to figure it out. And then him running frantically through the forest in the middle of the night.
Yes.
And John went to go pick up some of the guys that came in a little bit later that evening and like running in front of the thing. So like there were just like these great, like hilarious moments and inside jokes and stuff that were created through the bonding of like the brotherhood that went through that experience together. And so, yeah, I don't think there wasn't a single testimonial that I read through where anyone was like, oh yeah, I regret going. This was the worst weekend ever. Like, yeah, we all like suffered through certain things. And there was an aspect of it where you're sacrificing comfort and comfortability, but at the end, we all grew and were better men for it. So,
So how do we take this and apply it to our listener? It's like now that like they've kind of got to catch and look in on like what we went through. What does all this mean?
Yeah, I think there's multiple ways you could go about this. You could do a 40-day fast.
Yes.
You could do a 40-hour sobriety
Yes.
thing where you cut everything out, or you could literally go on your own version of the 40-hour camping experience.
What's awesome is through Saints Crown, we've decided in the future to offer some experiences like this.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we do, we do 40-hour like immersive experience, which we'll do. But another thing that we're going to do is a 40-day challenge, which has a very similar framework. Yes. You're still in your home environment, but you're putting certain things in place and asking the right questions to produce a level of massive clarity. Yeah. So I'm excited about that coming.
I am too. Yeah. I just am on the tail end of doing a 40-day challenge myself. And it was really cool because I've done fasting before, and fasting was an aspect of the challenge, but I felt like the Lord was highlighting implementing disciplines within the 40-day time frame that were going to be life impacting, and we're going to help contribute to the theme of what I felt like the Lord said was going to happen, which was going to be 40 days of new boldness, 40 days of courage. And it's funny because there were so many things that happened in that 40-day process that required me to be bold, required me to be courageous. And so it's pretty powerful when you are operating in obedience and you just see the fruit of what happens when you willingly submit yourself to something like that. Yeah.
Let me ask the listener then a question. It's like, what would it look like for you to take 40 hours out of your schedule, put yourself in a place of intense sobriety out of your element, just to gain massive clarity?
Yeah.
Set some boundaries in place, ask some key questions. I would challenge you to do that. It's probably not a practice in your life because it's not a practice in most people's life. Yeah. The idea of going up on the mountain, separating yourself from the hustle and the bustle and the expectation. And it's a challenge to pull away, but it's a necessity.
Yes.
Because what you gain from it is you get a resurgence of vision, a vision that you didn't have before. You get out of the muck and the mud of life, and you get to see not only how far you've come, but what's possible for the future.
Yes.
So my challenge to you is schedule that. Schedule away 40 hours immediately. Do it right now, and tell your wife, tell your boss, and haul off and have a good stinking time. Yeah. So I think that concludes today's episode. What do you think?
That's
All right.
it.
Well, we'll see you next time.
See ya.
Thank you for investing in yourself with us. And if you feel like, hey, I found my tribe, right now, go ahead and subscribe to the show. Also, you can go ahead and take your masculine role assessment, or you can just find us on social media at Instagram at saints.crown. I hope to see you soon.